the department is at 8.2%. And it would be expected of us that the department should at least surrender some of the monies that it spent in 2018 and 2019 in the current financial year, and start surrendering for most probably 3 to 5 years, depending on what the legislation chairperson. The Free State Legislature chair has always been spending lower than the norm. In the past 3 years, the legislature spent 43%, 42.4%, and 44.6%. This year has also been very low on expenditure, mainly due to the infrastructure. But the department depends on the Department of Public Works to implement its infrastructure projects. And in most cases, they found it very, very, very difficult in that public works has not been moving at a pace that the department expected it to move. And the provincial treasury chair, you also notice that we have also been below the norm over the past 2 years, but we have exceeded the norm due to COVID-19 this year. The cooperative governance chair, there's a steady expenditure in that department, 49.8% to 50.6% chair. It's only now that they spent 38.8% due to COVID-19. The Department of Public Works and Infrastructure spent 55.5% in 2018, and then they spent much lesser, closer to the norm, in 2019 to 49%, and it's now at 57% due to COVID-19, as well as the transfers to municipalities. The Police, Roads and Transport Department, they are stabilizing their expenditure as well. Chair, in 2018 they were at 58.2%, they are now at 49.0%. I may not go through the rest of the other departments' share, but they are all below the norm of 50%. The slide number 13 chair. It's a table that gives us the figures per department, and this figures basically explains what appears on the graphical representation in the previous slide, and you will see year to year how the departments have been spending. I think we have spent a lot of time explaining that share. We should not necessarily the figures themselves. And the performance of the province share over a period of 3 years on slide 14. Chairperson, 2018 we were at 51.9%, which is slightly above the norm. 2019, 48.3%, slightly below the norm. And we have spent now 45.3% in 2021 due to COVID. But I must mention also, Chairperson, that in 2019, the budgets were approved slightly later because of the elections and the new administration. That's why we have gone slightly lower with our expenditure, especially on the conditional grants. The economic classification, slide number 15, Chairperson, you will notice that as at the end of September, the compensation of employees were at 47%, 3% below the norm, and this was mainly as a result of the Department of Health. As I mentioned earlier on, the department has not been able to fill some of the positions, and even the Department of Education spent below the norm in the current financial year on compensation of employees. And the goods and services share, we are at 44.9%. It's also as a result of low expenditure, especially in health. And the transfers and subsidies share, we are at 40%. Chairperson transfers to municipalities. We have been transferring funds to municipalities. We have been transferring funds to schools, even under this pandemic period or disaster period. And there is also chair within the legislature chair. There is also a challenge of party political funding there. That is, we have not funded the party politics adequately there. And then the payments for capital assets share, the Department of Health have been requested to not to continue with the field hospitals. That is, the field hospitals have been put on hold. That is why no expenditure on CAPEX. Chair, I must just mention that on slide 16, the only department that has exceeded its the norm, it's the Department of Police, Roads and Transport, at 51.5%. We are working very hard with the department to manage the wage bill there. This is as a result of the traffic officers and the security personnel in that department. As it is, Chair, in fact, the department still remains under staffed, even though it's spending at 51.5%, and the department is projecting them to overspend on COE, as well as the Department of Sports, Arts, Culture, and Recreation. Chair, the 3-year comparison on COE, you will notice that we have always been slightly above the 50%, mainly because of the Department of Education and the Department of Health. But in the current financial year, we are below at 47%. The number of field posts, Chair, I will not necessarily go through all the departments that I just mentioned, but in 2019, September, we had a staff complement of 64,000 employees and 64.1. And in September 2020 now, we are sitting at 64.6 million. Police, roads and transport, 2,779 officials. Social development, 2,135. Public works, 1,259. And the Department of Agriculture, 1,081 employees. And slide number 21, Chair, just highlights that we've got 2,168 officials that are placed out of assessment within all our departments, Chair, and the financial implication thereof is 159 million, and there are 321 officials with no salary implication, and there are 337 that are basically giving us a savings of 26,000. The next slide, Chair, talks to the additional posts that we have in departments. That is posts additional to the establishment. Some of the departments are busy reviewing the structures, and in future, after reviewing the structures, these figures may change. Chair, Department of Treasury is one of those departments that are reviewing its structure, because we've got some additional mandates now on municipal finance recovery plans to monitor those for municipalities that are under Section 139 and the municipalities that have requested us to assist them with financial recovery. We call them municipalities under voluntary municipal recovery plan. And Chair, the next slide is just a graphical representation of additional posts. You will notice that most of them are with the Department of Health, Police, roads and transport, and agriculture. And the majority of these additional posts here you find would include security officials. Slide number 24, it's just the details, care department, per level. I will not go through those, Chair. The overtime that we are spending, Chair, in the social cluster, that is the Department of Social Development, Health and Education, Chair, we are spending 40 million on overtime. That is year to date. And the breakdown per department, notice that social development is at 816,000 rands. The Department of Health is at 39 million. Education, 305,000 rands. The departments, overtime of departments that are within the infrastructure and economic cluster, they are spending 2.1 million Chair on overtime. Public works is spending 245,000 rands. Police, roads and transport, 1.7 million. And remember, this would also include the traffic officers. The distiller, 20,000 rands. Agriculture and rural development, 113,000 rands. Departments under the governance cluster, Treasury, Human Settlements and Quota, we have spent 80,000 rands. Chairperson, year to date. The biggest over expenditure is with the Treasury Department. It's as a result of the COVID-19. You remember, Chair, that our procurement department is not designed to carry such a huge procurement. Our staff worked from Monday to Sunday, from 8 o'clock to between 8 and 10 in the evening. So that is why we have spent so much this current financial year. But this is not our normal trend as a department. Department of Human Settlements, 4.1, that is 4,178. COPTA, 25,867.8. Goods and services chair, we are at 44.9 chairperson. You notice that all the departments, with the exception of public works and treasury, are below the norm. And treasury and public works, as I've already mentioned, have exceeded the target. But if you look at goods and services in the next slide, slide number 29, the 3-year comparison, we started at 53.5, 2018, and then 19, 45%, in 2020, we're at 44.9%. The transfers and subsidies share, we're at 80%, and the department's projects that we may exceed by 6.5%, which is something that we have to closely monitor as provincial treasury. Slide number 31. Chairperson, the 3-year comparison for transfers. You notice that the expenditure is under control. The capital expenditure follows the same trends. Chairperson, I have already indicated that Department of Health has put a hold on the field hospitals, and that has reduced their expenditure. The conditional grants, Chairperson, slide number 34. Within the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, Chair, the department has only spent 8.4%. But you notice also that the expenditure is quite seasonal. We will be monitoring how the department is spending, but from our bilaterals, there was a commitment by the department that it will up the game now now that we are on level 1 of the disaster areas. And then education, it's at 40.5% share. And you would notice, Chair, that the infrastructure grant is at 43.6%. And the department has indicated that it will also ensure that it remedies the situation and increase its performance. The Department of Health is at 42.3% chairperson. And the Department of Sports, Arts, Culture and Recreation at 8.8%. Public Works and Infrastructure is at 70.9%, and there's an indication that the department will be able to spend all its conditional grants. The police roads and transport is at 44.4% chairperson, and we will no doubt that the department will be able to spend all this money at year end. This year it's at 63%, which is a great improvement, and social development 25.4%, US settlements is at 23% share. We are worried with US settlements, given that the budget is at 849 and we have only spent 197, but the department last week went on the remedial action to ensure that it comes up with plans to make sure that it doesn't compromise quality and that there is no fiscal dumping, that it spends that was allocated to it. Infrastructure spending chairperson, on average, we are at 35.6%. We know that infrastructure was also restricted during level 5 to 3. And this is the infrastructure spending, slide number 37. Infrastructure spending, 3 years comparison, share. You notice that a number of departments have been improving. The Department of Social Development has been slightly erratic. We know that this was as a result of the project at Botshabelo, the substance abuse project. The Department of Public Works struggled also in 2019, but it's performing well this financial year. Police roads and transport has also picked up, agriculture and human settlements. But you would notice, Chair, that almost all the departments in 2019, as I've mentioned, spent very low by this time of the year because the budgets were approved late due to the change of administration. And Chair, I will skip slide 38. It's just an indication of how we have performed over a period of 3 years. This table tells us that we spent 42.1 in 2018, and then we had a slump in 2019, 27.9, and then improved to 25.6 in the current financial year. The cash position of the province, Chair, slide number 40. Chair, in April, this financial year, Chair, we started with an overdraft of 85,000, and we are sitting at 1.2 billion at this point in time. That is why we are saying we are investing money because of slow expenditure of the departments, and that is why we have managed to already exceed our interest target by the end of September. But you can see that the cash position has been improving since April till September 2020. Basically, in April, the reason why we're on overdraft is because of the over expenditure within the Department of the Premier, the Department of Education, and as well as the Department of Police Roads and Transport. The cash balances year on year, Chair, slide 41. You would notice that in September 2018, Chair, we had an overdraft of 395, and we improved in 2019 to 266 and positive, and in 2020 we are at 1.2 billion. The cost containment measures, Chair, all that we want to highlight, Chair, is that we are monitoring the cost containment budgets of the departments, and we expect departments to freeze the cost containment budgets and not to increase. If at all they would like to make changes, we would prefer that they must reduce the cost containment budgets. However, we have noticed that the Department of Health, the Department of Social Development, as well as the Department of Human Settlements have increased their budgets of the cost containment, and the rest of the other departments are in the green. Chair, the consolidated spending, slide number 45, per department on cost containment, there we are. The total expenditure is 418 million. And then the consolidated spending per item, Chairperson, slide 46. We may not take you through each item. The list is quite long. It's actually 2 slides. It takes 2 slides. And the analysis of the second quarter expenditure against cost containment measures items, Chairperson, has shown us that the items have reduced from 1.2 billion, 1.287 billion to 1.237 billion as at the end of September, which is a good progress for the province, though we've got 3 departments that increased. And this was mainly as a result of reprioritization of budgets for funding COVID-19 related response measures, Chairperson. As Provincial Treasury will continue to monitor the expenditure against cost containment measures and report to the relevant role players on a quarterly basis. But we expect that budgets should be frozen after they have been captured by the 1st of April each year. The key conclusions and recommendations, Chairperson, under slide 49, we recommend that PROPEC notes the provincial owned revenue and revenue performance of the first and second quarter of 2020-21 financial year, notes the province has collected owned revenue amounting to 436 million, which translates to 34.9% of the revenue target of 1.2 billion, notes that own revenue was hugely affected by the pandemic, notes that the provincial consolidated spending amounts to 17.6 or 45% of the total provincial budget, notes that compensation of employees' expenditure amounts to 11.8, which translates to 47% of the allocated budget, notes that the province spent 3 billion or 39.2% on conditional grants, and that we have spent 31.4% on infrastructure, which is 1.1 billion. Number 8, under slide 50, we recommend that the PROPEC notes that the province had a positive bank balance of 1.2 billion as at the end of September 2020, of which the bulk of the funds relate to slow spending on conditional grants, and that the committee notes that the cost containment measures items decreased from 1.287 to 1.237 billion. The expenditure is at 35%. Notes that the revenue adjustment processes will provide accurate estimates on own revenue. Notes that all departments are encouraged to ensure efficiencies in the processes of own revenue collection. Notes that monthly own revenue reports will be assessed from departments as a warning tool for performance. Notes that own revenue will be reported to various forums in order to be assisted by principals. Notes that the department should restrict growth in numbers of non-essential and administration posts, no recruitment of personnel without sufficient funds in the budget. Notes that out of adjustment and additional posts should be managed through placement of the matching officials in vacant posts and also revision of organizational structures. Notes that overtime should be approved by the accounting officers under strict conditions and in line with the approved departmental overtime policy as well as available budget. And that concludes the first presentation, Chair, on the first quarter expenditure. But Chair, perhaps maybe we should also take the COVID-19 expenditure report, if Chair allows.
And can we allow that, honorable members? Okay. Which one is it?
COVID-19 expenditure.
Which document is it?
Free State items procurement reports.
We don't have that document.
It's a short presentation, Chair, and it's mainly graphs.
Can we be given the documents? Do you have copies on your side? Proactive. Yeah, I know you're always proactive. Okay. We'll take it first. We'll take it first. Okay, we can continue, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chairperson, year to date, the expenditure by all the departments on COVID-19 stands at 846 million, of which, Chair, 49% of that 846 have already been expensed, and 51% it's still commitments that needs to be honored. And Chair, the 60% of this amount, which is 507 million, has been spent on companies that are in the province, and 40%, which is 338 million, has been spent on companies that are outside the province. And the departmental view, Chair, this is just an indication per department on which provinces did we spend the money. We did not spend, we spent actually 1% on Eastern Cape. That was the Department of Health that spent on Eastern Cape. And then almost all the departments, except the Department of Human Settlements, have spent in the province. And Gauteng, Chair, we've spent 34%. You'll see the figures per department there, and we spent the agriculture and rural development spent on Limpopo, and provincial treasury also spent 1% on Limpopo. Nothing was spent on Mpumalanga. Northwest, the Department of the Premier spent 77% of its budget or of its expenditure in Northwest, and the Department of Treasury spent 1% of its expenditure in Northern Cape. In Western Cape, Chair, we have only the Department of Health that spent 8% of its budget, and the grand total obviously would give you 100% share. Now, the next slide, Chairperson, is just the departmental view. It's a graphical representation of how the departments have spent. Free State Provincial Treasury spent 283 million, which is 34%. Health, 260 million, 31%. Human Settlements spent 163 million, 19%, followed by Public Works at 75.6 million, 9%. Distia, 2% at 20.7 million. Education, 15.7 million, 2%. And the rest of the other departments spent slightly lesser. And the total suppliers that were used by Free State Department's chair, it's 315 suppliers where we procured from, and Treasury has procured from 117 suppliers of the 315 to the value of 283 million. Health spent on 73 suppliers, 260 million. Human settlements spent on 9 suppliers, 163 million. Public works spent on 40 suppliers, 75 million. Distia spent on 12 suppliers, 20 million. Education spent 15.7 million on 13 suppliers. Police, roads and transport, 24 suppliers, 8 million. And social development, 17 suppliers, 7.9 million rands. Office of the Premier, 12 suppliers, 6.2. Sports, arts, culture and recreation, 3 suppliers and 1.4 million. Agriculture and rural development, on 7 suppliers, spent 1.3 million. COCTA on 11 suppliers spent 1.2 million. The next slide, Chair, the pie chart there indicates to us that we spent the greater amount of money on Mangaung and Lejoliputswa 25.4, Fezile Dabi 16.5, Tabomfuzanyana 13.8, Harip 3.3. This is the expenditure within the province. And the designated groups on total spend, black owned 78%, 663 million, rural township 22.73%, youth owned 184 million, 22%, military veterans 1%, 7.2, disabled 1%, and women-owned companies 20%. The next slide, Chair, it's just the table that basically gives us the information and values of what we have spent per department on those designated groups. It goes up to slide number 9. Then slide number 10, Chair. This is the breakdown of the expenditure by provincial treasury, where treasury has spent 283 million. 76% of that money, which is 214 million, was expensed, and 24% is still under commitments, meaning we have not yet paid the 68.9 million. And we have spent 88% of that money in the Free State, and 12% of it was spent outside the province. The expenditure on cloth masks by the provincial treasury, you would notice, Chair, that we have basically procured 1.8 million cloth masks. That was the ideal allocation. We allocated 1.1, and we have only delivered 742,000. And this then concludes our expenditure on COVID-19, Chairperson. I don't know if, Chair, should we then take questions, or should we go to the next presentation? I'll hear from Chairperson.
Okay, you can continue.
The next presentation, Chair, will be the first and second quarter performance.
I'm sure members, you do have that.
Chair. We have distributed it.
Okay.
It's a PowerPoint presentation, Chair. Yeah. Would you like to take us through? Chair. Okay, let me take you through the presentation, Chair. I'll do it. No, this is the annual performance. Can I get a copy? This is the performance. So Richard, this presentation is attached to the annual performance plan, but it starts from slide 24.
Can you just show us the document from outside? Oh, yes.
Yes, Chair. Slide number 24.
24, thank you.
24, yes, thanks. Okay. Chair, the CFO will take us through so that they can.
Okay. Thank you, honorable members. Greetings once more. Thank you, HOD. We present hereby, in terms of the department's required items for presentation. I think we're presenting the APP 2020-2021, and followed by the expenditure report for the first two quarters, as well as performance for the first quarter against the target set, and performance for the second quarter against the target set, which has not been verified. The first slide speaks about the role and mandates of Treasury, which is taken from the Public Finance Management Act, Section 18, as well as the MFMA and the Division of Revenue Act, which is passed annually. We confirm that there was no changes to the legislative mandate of this department. And then the next slide, as we continue with the role and mandate, we state that the Treasury supports the achievement of all the MTSF outcomes. Emphasis is placed on the outcome number 1, which is building a capable, ethical and developmental state. And there's also Free State Growth and Development Strategy. The pillar there is number 6, which emphasizes good governance, and driver 15, to foster good governance to create conducive climate for growth and development and long-term program. Our strategic focus, we have outlined our vision and mission and our intended impact, and as well as the intended outcome on the next slide. These are sound and responsive management practices. We also intend to improve fiscal sustainability in the provincial departments and public entities, and financial accountability, fiscal sustainability also in municipalities, and as well as financial accountability in municipalities. We also intend to drive or institutionalize effective and efficient infrastructure delivery and management in the province through those two systems that I mentioned, IDMS and FIDPM. Our programs in the next slide range from program 1 up to 5, and this is administration.
Sorry, CFO. Some of us, we are a little bit lost. We don't know which slide. Which slide are you? Are you in the first slide?
We are on slide number 6.
6, okay. We were referred to HOD slide 24. So maybe you are taking us through your preamble or your background or introduction, eh? No, it's fine. I get it. You know, we differ in terms of understanding. Please don't be too harsh on us. So that's why we wanted to. So I see other people don't have patience for others. Okay. You are page 3.
Sorry, Chair, for the confusion. We're supposed to present first the first and second quarter performance, which starts from slide 24 onwards. But now the CFO started with the APP now. That is from slide 1. So
okay.
Maybe then he should then proceed with the APP. He's now on slide 6 already.
All right. So slide 6. Okay.
You can continue, Sipo.
Okay, thank you very much. On slide number 6, we have outlined our programs, which range from 1 to 5, program 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Program 1 is administration. Program 2 is sustainable resource management. 3, asset and liability management. Program 4, financial governance, and MFM, program 5. The role of program 1 on slide number 7 is to provide leadership and strategic management in accordance with the legislation, regulations, and policies. Also to ensure that all other program 4 to 5, 2 to 5, are supported by this program. So in this program 1, we have the Office of the MEC, Office of the HOD, under management services. In there you have risk management, internal audit, corporate services. We have financial management and internal audit. Or internal audit is the departmental is outside HOD's, stated separately from HOD's office there. And then our output indicators, the program 1 in the current year. Here are the activities that we have set out to perform to achieve our intended outcomes. They range from percentage of employees with disabilities, the number of women or percentage of women in senior management service, to the percentage of funded and filled posts. Also, there's a target to approve a organizational structure, and we also have indicators there that include IT projects. There's also, just to touch a few, average number of days taken to resolve disciplinary cases. And then on the same slide, if I can look at the target, we say that percentage of employees with disabilities, we target 1.9% of our structure. And then for women in senior management, we're looking at achieving 35% in terms of the current year's target. For our structure for filled post, our target is to fill our structure up to 85%. I think consideration is made of the impact of COVID-19 on priorities that were affected, of which hiring of staff was also affected. The IT projects that are key, we have sought to perform an electronic evaluation tool of supply chain management, basically to assist the bid evaluation, bid adjudication committees to reduce the number of errors that usually occur. In here, this is an internally developed system which do not have financial implications, and there's another element of post-audit action plan system that is also internally developed. Through the other one is business intelligence, where IT is looking at making sure that we follow electronic process of issues such as submissions from internal and leave applications. And we are climbing on the strength of Microsoft products to achieve this one. If I go to the next slide, slide number 9, there's also further output indicators there for program 1. We want to finalize our grievances within 30 days, 80% of them. This is our target. And full financial disclosure by all employees is 100% expected. And there's also activities on employee health and wellness programs. I think these are the key ones. So in terms of our internal control, the 14th output indicator, in terms of our score on the work file for interim financial statements, which also helps to make sure that we progress or maintain the current status of governance and audit. We're saying our audit file must be 95% complete. That's our target. Nothing below 95%. And lastly, on the slide number 10, you have 2 indicators there. The key controls score, that assessment that we get from program 4 within the department. The monthly one, we say that our key control assessment, which confirms consistency in how we conduct administration and elimination of errors and all that, we intend to maintain a score of 89%, and the quarterly one at 72%. And lastly, our percentage of invoice to be paid within 30 days, Treasury targets 100% of invoices. Chairperson and members, I shall go through to program 2 on slide number 11, which is sustainable resource management. We have outlined its role, which is professional advice and support on provincial economic analysis and fiscal policy, and management of the annual budget process, and the implementation of provincial budgets. So these are the outlined programs sub-programs that are under program 2, and the indicators on slide number 12. They also do research papers, and they undertake publications and quarterly labor market reviews, and they produce reports on provincial revenue. So all these targets are outlined on the right-hand side of the output indicator stated here. I shall also proceed to slide number 13, and we can see there that there's quite a number of activities that program 2 undertakes, and the target that are outlined. They perform in-year monitoring, assessment, and also spending on personnel, and they produce reports. So they have targets that there shall be 4 reports that shall be produced on spending on personnel, and 15 reports for in-year monitoring assessment reports, to name a few. And they shall also, the last one that is outlined, that submit annual financial statements on PRF. And the target date there is 14 August 2020, which we shall address I think when we discussed the first quarter and second quarter performance. And then program 3, chairperson and members, on slide 14. This is asset and liability management. Mr. Mabilo's program, promoting effective management of assets, liabilities, and financial management systems. And they also procure cross-cutting transversal goods and services, such as COVID-19. The program consists of 3 sub-programs there, chairperson and members, and they have activities on output indicators on slide 15. They currently target, in terms of number of SEM assessment reports, 52 reports. And they shall also undertake annual procurement plan assessment. And we expect them to produce 13 reports in this regard as the target that is set internally. Number of reports assessment. They also assess transversal contracts. And there's 4 reports that they intend to provide in the current year. And they also look into the provincial performance on invoices paid within 30 days. There shall be 12 reports there. One of the other key functions is to monitor assets, play oversight on assets monitoring, and there shall be 56 reports to be produced there. And I think the 43rd output indicator here, percentage of working hours that bus terminal servers are available. So the target is to maintain 95% of 8 working hours. This is important for business continuity and maintenance. Okay, the last one is the training that they conduct on the 3 main systems, which is BAS, PESAL, and LOGIS. They intend to train a total of 210 users on this systems in the current year. We move further to slide number 16, financial governance, the program that is headed by the Provincial Accountant General, whose role is to promote accountability through substantive reflection of financial activities of the province. And they also do compliance with financial norms and standards. They are broken down into 3 sub-programs. And on slide number 4, slide number 17, they produce items or output indicators such as assessment of interim financial statements of all departments. They also assess annual financial statements and work files, supporting work files to those financial statements. So the target on each is to produce 3 reports on each of these areas that are stated here. And they also make sure that there's a timely submission of consolidated financial statements, annual financial statements, and annual reports. So the target dates for those respective items are stated as 31st August, 31st October, and 31st December for annual report. And they also they shall produce a number of consolidated monthly and quarterly key control metric assessment reports. And this, we anticipate 17 reports in the current year. And they will undertake 1 support program, and they shall produce 2 consolidated assessment reports on risk management in the province. And next slide, slide number 18, as we proceed with financial governance. In terms of their internal audit responsibility, they shall produce 1 assessment report, but it shall be consolidated assessment report. And they shall conduct training sessions relating to risk management and internal audit matters. Here they target 2 sessions in the current year, and they shall conduct 3 fraud awareness sessions. Slide number 19, municipal finance management within Department of Treasury, Program 5. They promote and improve the state of financial governance and management at local government level. And their role, again, and they are broken down into 7 sub-programs, and these are districts. There's 1 program support, and Thabo Mofokeng district up to okay. There's also facility Harib, and they have municipal risk management and internal audit and municipal supply chain management and compliance. Now, Program 5, Chairperson, intends to produce consolidated budget assessment reports of all municipalities. There shall be one in the current year, one report. They also assess Section 71 MFMA reports, but they shall publish about 4 of them in the current financial year. And I'm just looking at the other key ones that we have to emphasize. The number of municipalities supported on SCM compliance, which is a challenge. 22 reports, they intend to do that. And they also have 22 municipalities on that will be assessed and supported on internal audit and risk management. And they'll also conduct training sessions on internal audit and risk management, two training sessions there. Budget allocation, we have the highlights, Chairperson, not to go in detail. For 2020 medium-term estimates, the last column, we have current allocation of 2020-2021, which is a budget that is aimed at supporting the activities that are set out in the APP. 535 million. It's a big jump from the previous year, but this jump is due to the allocation of COVID-19 budget into the Department of Treasury within Program 3, which is sitting at 287 million currently. Going to the next year, it goes further down. It goes down to 363 million and ultimately 382 million in the outer year. And in the next slide, slide number 23, this budget allocation summarily is broken down in terms of economic classification. The bottom line of total reconciles to the previous slide, 535 million, 363 million, 382. But the compensation budget is sitting at 252 million in the current year. It grows to 267 million and stabilizes at 280 million in the outer year. Goods and services budget is quite huge in the current year because of COVID-19 allocation at 280 million, and then it goes to 93 and 98 in the two outer years. And Chairperson, we shall move to first and second quarter expenditure performance in the 2020-2021 financial year, the current year. As at the end of September, the department had spent 352 million of its 535 million budget that is allocated for this year, and that this expenditure equates to 65.8%. It is above the norm of 50% if you look at 6 months later in terms of the expected linear performance. But we can see that Program 3 is sitting at 82%. In terms of the previous presentation by HOD, this aligns to that presentation that the driver of this rapid spending is the COVID-19 expenditure, which currently sits in Program 3 of the department, sitting at 82%. And the items of economic classification, on the same slide, slide 25, to date, the salaries are spending at 49.8%. In terms, it's expected closer to 50% performance 6 months later. And goods and services are 77.3%. So the budget for goods and services, we did mention that it is high due to allocation of COVID-19, and the 77%, which is more than 50% normal performance at this point in time, is due to COVID-19 expenses that we had to incur. And there is a brief comment on the next slide, but it addresses, it makes a comment towards the first quarter performance, which is also presented within the second quarter. But in terms of the second quarter, the target is 50%, but we are sitting at 65%, and we have explained that this is due to rapid spending in COVID-19. Other matters on the next slide, slide number 28. The department has got one possible unauthorized expenditure, which comes from the 18-19 financial year, and it is currently under investigation. And then we have irregular expenditure, which the department has reduced quite drastically in terms of new occurrences. And so we are saying here that 2 additional cases were identified during 1920, and these 2 cases increased in value due to expenditure in line with approved transversal contracts. So this was a continuation of the existing contract, and which we are confirming that it relates to matters on prescripts of SANAs, and there's other cases that relates to 3 quotations. And when we break them further down, we say that one case relates to service, sole service provider, where certificate of that sole provider was not provided. So these are the entry cases of irregular expenditure, but the department is effectively dealing with this by handing over to the service provider that is appointed in the province to investigate and finalize, as well as also recommending the small ones looking at value for money or the cost implications of handing over, and when comparing to the internal capacity to investigate this smaller quotations, irregular expenditure cases. So we also are handing over the remaining 25 cases to the service provider that is appointed for irregular expenditure investigation in the province. When you're looking at fruitless and wasteful expenditure, we have identified 4 cases during 1920 financial year, and we have handed over these cases to legal services within the department for further investigations. If we move to the next slide, slide number 29, goods and services performance, first quarter, second quarter. I think this is inherently the breakdown of items that make up goods and services by size. The big items in there, it's advertising. This is the public information platform expenditure of 12.6 million to date, end of second quarter. First quarter there was no expenditure. Second quarter we spent 4.5, and there was to date the total spending is 4.5 million, and that's 36%. And there's also computer services, and there's also consultants, which includes the service provider that we spoke about of irregular expenditure investigation, as well as allocations to municipal support that's sitting in the 14.2 million. And today, we have, end of September, we've spent 17.4%, which is 2.4 million of the total budget. Consumable expenditure as one of the biggest item there is COVID-19 expenditure. To date, end of September, we have spent 91% of that allocation. So that's the emphasis on some of the big items there, Chairperson. The next slide, slide number 30, speaks about inventory. We emphasize that although we've had to procure PPE for the province, we started initial recognition of these expenses were in inventory, but subsequently we reallocated to newly consumables items as per the support of National Treasury. And the next slide, slide number 31, breaks down the nature of items that we are utilizing to every time when we procure and execute payment for COVID-19. So they vary from uniform protective clothing, clothes, medical supplies, toiletries, washing and cleaning detergents, and other supplies. So our allocation of COVID-19 expenses have been, for classification purposes, allocated in this manner, and they reconcile back to the budget allocation as well as the total spending to date of 91%. And we also, on the next slide, break down the local and international travel and subsistence chairperson, 7.3 million, and to date we have spent 15.3% of this budget. And we also have computer services, 25 million on the next slide, slide 33. The computer services allocation budget there is 25.6 million. We have spent 39.3% to date. And this is the breakdown of the items that go into this CETA-related payments for our systems, 3 main systems in the province. Slide number 34, Chairperson, we talk about theft and losses for 2020-21, first and second quarter. There is 2 incidents that involve the theft of training venue CPUs and theft of computers. And this to the value stated there, Chairperson, of 49,000 and 15,000 respectively. And the monies have not been recovered. The comment is that these cases have been referred to legal services for further investigation and recommendation. So we await outcome on these cases. The staff debt on the slide number 35. The total balance in terms of the second last column on this slide is 267,000, and these cases in the main relate to ex-employees and have been handed over to state attorneys for recovery. And we also on the next slide address the breakdown of consultants, contractors and agencies. That 14.2 million we addressed on the previous slide, that we spent 17.4% to date, which is 2.4 million. And I think the biggest one there is that 11.8 million, which relates to allocation to the municipal finance management and the service provider for irregular expenditure investigation. Those are the 2 main drivers of consultants' expenditure. Performance of, on slide 37, performance as of the end of the second quarter, annual performance plan progress in the current year. In the first quarter, Chairperson and members, we have a total of planned targets that go to 18. We've achieved 15 in the first quarter, 3 were not achieved in the first quarter. And those 3 are attributable to Program 2 and Program 3. And when you move to the second slide, slide 39, for second quarter unverified performance, we have in there stated that we have planned to achieve 29 targets, of which 23 were achieved, and 6. That means 6 was not achieved. We shall go to the details of the variance, the reasons for the variances, and which areas were affected. So, Chairperson, cumulatively on the next slide, slide 40, year to date, end of second quarter, the 2 quarters combined, they reconcile to 29 planned targets and achieved 20 cumulatively, and 9 not achieved when you combine the 2 quarters. The next slide explains, slide 41 explains on Program 1, that 1 target that was not achieved is in relation to an online newsletter that we had planned to distribute and issue. This was not achieved due to our inability to work during the lockdown. But there's still a commitment that the newsletter, online newsletters that will be produced in the third quarter. And then Program 2, if we address their variances for the reasons for not achieving some of the planned targets, they had planned to have a number of quarterly labor market reviews. I think there's a report, one report was planned, but they could not achieve that. Now, this is mainly due to the fact that the information that they rely on Stats SA quarterly labor publications for the second quarter was only released by Stats SA on the 29th of September. This will be produced in the third quarter with this information available now. And there's also a variance of one item there on IYM assessment report. They have planned to produce 8 reports. Actually, they produced 7. So the audited report was changed to end of October by National Treasury as a result of the lockdown. So everything has been moved slightly out in terms of our normal target dates due to COVID. The report will be submitted in the third quarter, that outstanding IYM assessment report. And continue to program 2 still on slide number 43. They had planned to produce a quarterly infrastructure review, a report, 2 reports, but they only produced 1. So lockdown also affected their ability to hold a meeting there to conclude this. Okay. And the other one is timely submission of annual financial statements on the PRF. The target date, we had outlined this one in the APP that their target date was 14 August 2020, but they could only do that on the 25th. So the reason for them not meeting the actual set date, it's the fact that our processes for reporting and auditing was moved forward or moved out slightly. But again, there we make an emphasis that although the target has been set to 14 August, the submission date is not legislated, and later submission had no effect on the auditing of these annual financial statements. Program 3, chairperson and members had planned to produce assets monitoring reports, 28 of them, but they could only produce 10. Now, due to the fact that there were difficulties with transport for the vehicles that we use, they could not achieve this. And also they could not visit some of the departments during the first quarter due to lockdown. And this has largely contributed to the underperformance or not producing a committed number of assets monitoring reports. Moving to financial governance program 4, performance indicator, the number of consolidated monthly and quarterly key control metric assessment report. Planned was 6, actual is 5. Here, one out of 6 reports was submitted by the entities, but there is a non-compliance letter that was issued to this entity by this program. And they also, in terms of the next slide, slide 46, they are planned to conduct training sessions relating to risk management and internal audit. So this was affected by the audit committee session, which was to inform this training session, which was postponed. So audit committee session was postponed as the AGSA was needed to present their general report and possible risks for 2020-2021 financial year. They will still conduct this session in the third quarter. Chairperson and members. And lastly, the municipal finance management at the MFM program 5, they would produce a number of one consolidated report on the submission of AFS to the AG. Now, they could not achieve that in terms of the target date. The reason is that the submission date for financials was postponed to October because of the lockdown regulations. Chairperson and members, this is the end of our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, CFO. Honorable members, this brings us to the end of the presentations, HOD. And then I will then allow the honorable members to ask any matters arising from the presentations which were before us. We won't go in sequence. Probably each member would want to ask any of the presentation. Would just highlight that I'm referring to presentation 1 or 2, first quarter, or the expenditure, or or the procurement report. I see the hand of the Honorable Majake, then Honorable Van Vieren, and then Honorable Smith, and then Honorable Moleleki Mesara will be the end, the closing. Okay? Honorable Majake.
Thank you very much, Chair. Honorable Chief Whip, honorable members, and welcome HOD and the entourage from provincial treasury. Chair, I must confess and put disclaimer forward that in welcoming these presentations, I think there are 4 of them, including this one of COVID. It's unusual to receive them being bombarded with so many issues and information simultaneously and all of that. Having said that, I will try to navigate and sum up issues in the interest of time. Maybe before I fail on my task, let me start with this one, then I will come to mine. Let me come to the set of questions that are prepared for us. Mine is number 5, which talks about compensation of employees. It reads as follows: compensation of employees, we never expect a huge variance here. This variance means that you might not be managing this cost very well. Then the question is, what are the measures put in place to ensure that this cost does not go out of hand and it is controlled? Number 2, is there a process for department to motivate each vacancy before it is filled? And then question number 6, what the liquidity ratios and solvency ratios of the province? And lastly, number 7, what is the projected cash balance for the 2021 financial year? Having done that, Chair, having asked those questions that are prepared for us, can I take your 2 minutes just to ask mine? Mine, the first one will be on the first and the second quarter. The last presentation that has been made now. In terms of submission of financial statements, I might have lost something in the process in terms of this too much information that we have been bombarded with. What exactly is the issue there? I heard that the submission has been extended and all of that. So what is the state as we are sitting here? Are we ready to submit, or we have submitted, we are just waiting? Or is the one that we clapped hands about clean audit? Is that one? Oh, okay. Hence I say we are bombarded with a lot of information. So at one point we might lose some other information. Now, once more on record, congratulations, Chair, for that clean audit that the department has received. I think it's only fair to congratulate people when they have done well, and then, of course, ask for accountability where it's needed and all of that. So, once more, congratulations, HOD and the entourage. Okay, so that one is dispersed now because it's clarified. Then on the same first quarter and the second quarter, which one should I consider now? First quarter is 198 million, which was about 87%, and then the second quarter is 352 million, which is 65%. So should I say at the moment we are at a 65% expenditure, which is 352 million in terms of treasure? Is that my understanding? If not, please assist me and correct me. I think that's all on the first and second quarter check. Can I quickly go to APPs? On the APPs, this 30-day payment of invoices, it has always been there, be it budget speeches and are we doing it? Are we doing it? I've seen your target is 100%. Are you reaching that target? Do you pay service providers in 30 days? The reason why I'm asking that question, Chair, it is linked with presentation on COVID-19 expenditure. If I heard correctly, Chair, at the moment we are at 68 million, which is 24% of expenditure that must, or like, that must actually be implemented, if it's a correct English. You are at 64. You are at 64%, meaning that 68 million has not yet reached the intended beneficiaries or companies, if I may use that word. Yeah, commitment. You have written here commitment. You heard what I was trying to say. It's just the English, it's a problem, and some of us went to Senegal last week Friday. Anyway, so that's the issue. I wanted to link with the 30-day. Where is the linkage? And then I'm also, Chair warned us when he opened the meeting that we must try to confine ourselves on issues inside here. We must try to avoid those who are on the street. But I'm tempted to ask in terms of this 846 million of COVID-19, in terms of the elephant in the room, the SIU. Can you say anything on that? Lastly, Chair, this thing of conditional grants, I think, is the first presentation. What do you call the first presentation? The one we started with. What do we call the first presentation? The first one that we started with. Oh, yeah, that one, the second court. There is an issue there about a conditional grant and all of that. My worry is on agriculture, the 8.4% on agriculture. I wonder, are we not going to have a rollover there? I'm worried. I'm not sure you will guide us. And then the second issue is on we are presently sitting at 1.2 billion. And on this 1.2 billion, you also talk about cost containing measures, education, human settlement, and social development. The ones that necessarily don't comply with these cost containment measures. Is anything done there? Or is there monitoring and all of that? And what is it that you are going to do to avoid physical dumping in terms of human settlement? Realizing that we are more or less there. 28 February, it's next week. 28 February, it's next week, the end of financial year. And obviously, departments will try to do physical dumping. So what are mitigating circumstances? What is it that finance thinks it must be done and all of that? I think, Chair, I rest my case here by asking the two uncomfortable questions. Department of Public Works is intending to dispose assets, property. What are those properties? If you may enlighten us, what are those properties, and when are they intending to dispose them? I'm tempted to say some other things, but I will contain myself. And then the 34.9% collection revenue, which I think you have overemphasized it more than 3 times in your presentation, HOD, that this is an increase of investment because we were able to invest 1.2 billion and all of so this increase, how are we going to create a line function for you to say, okay, that increase, here it is, and then it's going to mitigate on our budget in terms of addressing 1, 2, 3 issues that we were not able to do in the past. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. No, it's fine. Thank you, Honorable Majoke. Honorable Van Vieren.
Chair, just a question. Shouldn't we perhaps just let them answer the first set of questions, and then we can, because they're going to answer some of my questions as well.
All right, that's what the committee wants. Can we then respond to, so that the members can also maybe have a rider on the clarity if it's not well? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chairperson, honorable members. Chair, on COE, what are the measures that we will be taking to control COE? I must mention, Chairperson, that I think for the past 3 years or so, before any department can appoint, they should obtain an approval for access to the PESAL system. That is the activation of PESAL system, so that they can make appointments. And we look at the budget, whether the position that they want to fill is budgeted for, and whether that position is vacant. So that is the controls that we have to make sure that departments do not overspend on COE. And obviously, Chair, there would be some other appointments outside the structures that have been made, especially contract appointments. I'll make an example, Chair, that the Department of COGTA, for instance, as and when there are municipalities under Section 139, will appoint the administrators. Those administrators are appointed outside the structures of the department. And also, at times when we make appointments for interns and some contract workers to deal with specific projects and programs that will be outside the structure. Chair, the question on liquidity and solvency ratios of the province, I would request that we should respond to that in writing, Chair. Obviously, we will rely on the audited financial statements of the previous financial year, the consolidation of the province, to respond to that question. And the annual report, Chair, is on a draft. You may not have a copy, but a copy here of the draft annual report. It's completed, it's in a draft form. It must just be submitted to Auditor General just to satisfy themselves that what we have written here is what has been audited, because we cannot report on anything that has not been audited. So that is the stage where we are at this point in time. And then the question on expenditure, especially COVID-19 expenditure in relation to 30 days payments. Chair, if you look at our department historically, we have been obliging with the law. We have been paying within 30 days all the time. But now, because of COVID-19, we had a challenge of the needs that exceeded the budget that was appropriated. And that on its own created a bit of a challenge. We have to, at some point, engage with the Department of Health, because that was the department that keeps on giving us the needs. Agree with them that they will suspend about 35 million of their COVID-19 budget to us, so that we are able to pay service providers. But we must still also go through the budget adjustment process, Chairperson, which we believe that the legislature will be kind enough to allow us to go through that process in November, so that we can make funds available. There is still a risk of about another 35 million that needs approval by the legislature before we can pay service providers. But we have not fully paid. I think we're at 95% or so. Some of the payments, as we know, were as a result of the delays in availability of budget. But some of the payments obviously has been stopped by the SIU, and I'll link this question with what we have asked Honorable Majake, that we must comment on the SIU. It's well known, it's public information that the SIU has stopped us from making payments to service providers that have provided us with gowns, because the Department of Health discovered that some of the gowns that were provided were not sterile gowns, or they were not sterilized, when the expectation was that this should be sterilized. And immediately we picked that up, because we are under investigation. We reported to the SIU that there is this discrepancy, and we are handling this case with the Department of Health. But SIU preferred that we should rather not even proceed with our discussions with health, but give them space so that they also satisfy themselves that there are no criminal activities or corrupt activities that has taken place there. So at this point in time, we are giving them time to deal with those issues and satisfy themselves. And as and when there's anything that we pick up, Chair, we report to them. we are obliged to report to them because they are investigating us. There are, for instance, 2 service providers that have not delivered what they were supposed to have delivered. We have cancelled their orders because they have far exceeded the time that we expected them to have delivered. We have reported to SIU again that these 2 service providers failed to submit, and therefore we have cancelled the contracts. And there is another service provider who provided almost about 1/3 of what the service provider was supposed to provide. We have cancelled the rest of the remaining items for delivery because they were not delivered on time. This was emergency procurement, and we expected people to deliver within the shortest possible time. We're giving them 3 days, and these ones have taken even more than a month. So we have cancelled those. But as and when there are any decisions that we take that relates to procurement of COVID-19, we report to SIU. Now, it's just unfortunate that when it appeared in the media space, Chair, they edit our responses. We had actually indicated to SABC that we have reported this matter to the SIU, but they have edited that. They've taken it out, Now it appears as if SIU has discovered this, and these are the irregular things that they are discovering in our space. So that's the situation where we are right now, but we are cooperating very well with SIU, Chair, and at this point in time, there's nothing really that makes us to feel uncomfortable about the processes that we have followed, because we have really done our best to follow the prescripts. And in the event that there would be some discrepancies, it will be this kind of discrepancies, and they are bound to happen in any procurement, Chair. And the question as to whether the Department of Agriculture is going to spend, that's the question we have also asked them, as well as Human Settlements, Chair, last week when we engaged them, because we are also concerned about the level of spending, and we are likely to believe that agriculture will be able to spend. But we have got our own doubts that Human Settlements will be able to spend all that it needs to spend. The reality is that with Human Settlements, we are talking construction, and construction industry has been not been functioning for quite some time now during level 5 and level 3. But with agriculture, not everything relates to construction. There are areas where they are buying equipment, there are areas where they are building capacity. So we are a little bit confident that agriculture can come up with a plan and still spend the allocated funds by the end of the financial year. And as to the properties that Public Works needs to dispose of, those are non-strategic properties, and most of them are residential properties. We have 4-roomed houses that are still owned by provincial government. 4-roomed houses, residential houses. Most of them are in the Mangaung area, Tabanchu specifically, and we also have a number of plots that are owned by provincial government as well as farms. The list is obviously with the Department of Public Works of all those properties that needs to be disposed of, and the department is currently working on that. I think they are awaiting the approval by the Premier to approve the committee, the disposal committee to be formed so that it can dispose of those properties. I don't know if there's anything that I may have left out. My colleagues will assist me, Chair. Thank you.
Right, I think we are fine. Maybe I've just noted some clarity on your response, but I'll give over to Honorable Van Vuuren.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, maybe just on the last answer, why do they want to dispose of this? Maybe I missed that one. I know it's 4-room houses and farms and plots, but why do they want to dispose of this? Then, Chair, my questions, can I continue with the questions? Question 3, give us the amount per revenue stream that resulted in a reduction of about 150 million in revenue. Give us a reason for each non-achievement. Tell us what effect will have on the Free State fiscus. What are the corrective active per revenue stream affected? That sounds right. Then 4, please take us through what the huge difference in office of the Premier, why that is there, and what changed. Then, Chair, on the first presentation, the one that the expenditure performed for the second quarter, my questions here will be, okay, the disposal of the land was answered. That's just that one question there. Then on page 10, education. The CFO said there that there's going to be an over expenditure of 184 million rand. And then he talked about taxes because of tax and things. Just explain to me what exactly that is and the tax part behind that also. Chair, then on page 15, the CFO said that there's not the political party funding was stopped, and if it or it's not part of the budget anymore. Just explain that to us, and if it's been stopped, where does the money come from? Because I'm sure it's still being paid over to the parties. Then, Chair. On page 18, the education part there, that's where there's a decline from 30,900 to 23 to. Explain the decline, please, in those filled positions. I know there's a lot of people that's been placed on a roll to get positions. Just explain that to us, please, if there's too many people in the department. Then, Chair, on page 22, it was the CFO talked about security officials, the appointment of security officials. I reckon that's part of the COVID-19 procedure. Where were they appointed and for what specific reason? On page 38, Jay, the CFO talked about the 2018-19, 19-20 and 2021. And they said there was a bit of a slip in 2019-20 on the infrastructure spending. Can you just explain to us what that little slip is and why it then dropped to 27%? Chair, then on the PPE, the Free State, that item procurement report, 13 October. On page 2, said the province has spent 60% in the Free State. I know in the other, I think it was Treasury's department, they spent 88% on that. Why so little in the Free State and not more? Chair, then on page 3, they said human settlements has spent 100% in Gauteng. On what? What was that? Why in Gauteng and not in the Free State? And also economic small business development, 86% in Gauteng, and also the Office of the Premier, 41% in Gauteng. What is that expenditure on, and why not in the Free State, especially if we want to try and stimulate the economy in the Free State? Then, Chair, on page 11, it's the cloth masks, but the allocated is 113, or is it now 1.3 million, and the delivery status is 742. Maybe it was answered, but just explain to me the difference and why it couldn't be delivered, the total amount that was purchased there. Then, Chair, on the last presentation, the PPEs, after the APP, okay, there is much. Just get to the sorry, Chair, just bear with me. Almost finished. On page 32, that subsistence page, the accommodation there is 78.5%. Why is it so high, especially during a time that we didn't travel that much? Or what is the reason for that accommodation being 78.5%. Then on page 34, it's the theft and losses. It's explained there that it's referred to legal services for further investigation, but this already took place in November last year. Why is it taking almost a year to be only referred for that investigation? Why can't we speed this up, especially when it's theft and losses? Then, Chair, on page 36, there's event promoters, consultants under the consultants, and 78.5% was spent there, and employee wellness just below that, 75%. Just explain to me what is that for and why is that so high? Thank you, Chair. I think that's the last question. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Van Vuren. HOD.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, honorable members. The first question...
Maybe HOD, let me just put a rider on the first previous questions, like how the Honorable has done. Maybe just to get clarity on these appointments which is outside the structure. Are they quantified as irregular, or what do you say about it? Because I don't hear anything that is actually giving us a clarity as a committee, because definitely we would want to play an oversight there. How does it happen? Is it, because at the end of the day, you said the approval on PESAL is done by yourselves as a department. Now, if there are these kind of appointments that are made out of the structure, as you alluded, then I would also like to get a clarity as you wrap up all the questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I would make a practical example with Treasury on appointments outside the establishment. We have been encouraged all the provincial treasuries to form a municipal financial recovery plan unit. Now, it takes long to approve a new structure. We must still get concurrence with the Department of Public Service and Administration. However, we've also been given money to appoint people so that we can start operating with those units. So those appointments are outside the structure, but this is what we are expected to do. They're even funded. We also have a similar case with the infrastructure. We have been given money by National Treasury to make sure that we capacitate our provincial treasuries to have infrastructure units where we have people qualified to monitor infrastructure projects. So basically, those appointments are still outside the structure. They are not necessarily irregular, Chair, but we obviously need to monitor what is happening in all the departments, what motivates the posts additional to the establishment. Chair, according to the regulations, we are actually not supposed to, but practically, if, like I'm giving you these reasons where we're supposed to establish a unit, you can't just today decide and change this organizational structure. You've got money to spend, you've got some responsibilities to carry. So you continue, you proceed whilst you await the concurrence of the DPSA. Now, Chair, the questions of Honorable Van Vieren.
I'm sorry for interjection, but there should be a framework. I don't know, there should be a framework that should give life to, or it's just operated from the secular, maybe.
Okay. Chair, I must mention, Chair, that initially or previously DPSA made provision, but they realized that in most cases departments abuse that provision of posts additional to the establishment. Some of the posts have always been there, for instance, the securities and all that. Some of them are contract workers that are dealing with specific issues. For instance, the Department of Health indicated that it will appoint 500 nurses, if not 5,000, I don't remember, nurses for the pandemic. That is over and above the structure of the department. And the situation on the ground compels that such decisions must be taken. Now, unfortunately, the regulations of DPSA have changed now. DPSA is now much more strict in that they do not provide that allowance. And yet, they also do not tell us, when we are faced with a situation like this, what is it that we must do? So it's a